All right, welcome to another episode of Piecing It Together, the podcast where we take a look at a new movie and try to figure out what movies inspired it. And today on the show, we are talking about the most Nicolas Cage movie of all time, The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent, featuring Nicolas Cage playing himself, as well as Pedro Pascal, like Barinholtz, Tiffany Haddish, Neil Patrick Harris. It's a really fun, wild movie, and for fans of movies in general, you're going to love it. For fans of Nicolas Cage, you're especially going to love it. And joining me to talk about it are the hosts of two different Cage-related podcasts, Darryl Edge from the Cage Rage podcast, and Petros Patsilivas from the Caged In Coppola Connections Podcast, which I was just recently on talking about Seven Chinese Brothers, a film that I love. And I was also on Cage Rage a while back, so check that out as well. Before we get to the conversation with these two guests, I do want to remind you, as always, to make sure you are subscribed to Piecing It Together wherever you listen to podcasts. You can rate and review us wherever you listen. We would appreciate those 5 stars. And follow us on social media at PiecingPod. So we got a long conversation coming up, so let's just get into it and talk about the unbearable weight of massive talent. All right, today is probably the episode I've been most excited about doing this year because, of course, I'm a big Nicolas Cage fan. And to talk about the unbearable weight of massive talent, I had to get not one, but 2 other huge Nicolas Cage fans. I've got Petros from Caged In and Darryl Edge from Cage Rage. Guys, how's it going?
Very well, thank you. Oh, there we go. Look at that. We're in sync.
It's happened already.
That was perfect.
That's how in sync we are of our love for Nicolas Cage, that we even say hello at the same time.
Yeah. When I was thinking about, like, who am I going to do this episode with, I'm like, I kind of just need to have both of them on because how else are we going to get the full breadth of discussing Nicolas Cage and this insane movie and everything that goes into this. But, before we start getting to the movie itself, I figured since obviously both of you will be covering this movie on your own podcasts, let's start with you, Darryl. What do you have planned? Are you doing just the main episode? Are you doing anything else related to the movie?
We've got a main episode coming out in due course. And like, as I'm sure Petros will mention as well, we've both had the recent massive pleasure, pun intended, of chatting with the co-writer Kevin Ettinen, co-writer and director Tom Gormican as well, which was a lot of fun. First press junkets for both of us. Those episodes are both live now. You'll notice as well, because I listened to yours, Petros, and yours is very professional. You're a seasoned interviewer, but this is a sneak behind the curtain for me. If you listen to my episode, you'll notice it's a bit rambly at the start because I didn't realise the interview had started. I was, the rookie going in. I thought they were going to say like an action or something, or 3, 2, 1 and count me in. Didn't happen, so I just sound like a bit of a lunatic for about 2 minutes. But other than that, it gets really good. So an interview and an episode to come.
That sounds awesome. What about you, Petros? What do you got planned?
So I have 2 episodes planned on The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent, apart from the interview. One of them being possibly the greatest and dumbest idea I've ever had, which will be myself, Darryl here, representing Cage Rage, a guy called Stu representing the Cage Fighting Podcast, and both the co-hosts of this podcast was written on the back of the Declaration of Independence, will be joining me for a mega chat all about The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent, but also we're going to try and figure out once and for all a top 5 Nick Cage ranking. So we're going to compile all of our rankings. I have sifted the internet, the message boards, the Reddit, like the One True God subreddit. I've reached out to previous guests and that got their top 5s, and I'm empirically figuring it out. So whatever's at 5th place is 1 point, whatever's at 1st place is 5 points, and it's fucking driving me insane. I'll tell you that for sure. Trying to compile all this data.
Oh, that must be just such a process. Yeah, I can't even imagine. But it's going to be fun to listen to. That's for sure. I'm very excited to see how that list like kind of comes together, and also that conversation. I mean, that's going to be crazy, but it should be a lot of fun. I mean, how often does a movie like this come along that, you know, can inspire, you know, podcasters such as yourselves to want to like really take such a huge undertaking like this, you know? It's a wild thing. And I had so much fun with this movie. I guess let's just get it out of the way. Were you both happy with it? I mean, being such Nicolas Cage fans, I know I was. What about you guys?
I think it's fair to say we were both quite thrilled with it.
Yeah.
And it sounds like a humble brag to say it, but we somehow wormed our way into an advanced screening, a VIP screening, he says in air quotes. We were just there sort of slinking and going, we shouldn't be here. But I think it's fair to say we were very happy with the movie. So it's one of those, you sort of expect bits and pieces when you go into it, but I think for all those people out there, and I'm sure they do it all the time on a podcast like this as well, saying, "Oh, the trailer showed everything. The trailer showed everything." Quiet down. You're wrong. You haven't seen anything. I think one of the main points. There's a scene with a wall that you see in the trailer. It plays so well in the movie, and it's one I've been thinking about and as well, and trying to see how many times I can just go to my local cinema just to keep pushing it back up the rankings and take out Fantastic Beasts.
Yeah, right. I want to use my AMC A-list and just buy a bunch of tickets for it since not enough people are going. But yeah, no, the jokes like that play so much better in the actual movie itself, I've found. And yeah, you're right. It's not all in the trailer. This trailer kind of worried me a little bit, to be honest with you. Like, I loved, of course, the idea of it. I love meta movies and I love Nicolas Cage and I love the idea of the movie. I didn't really think the trailer was selling me in the way that I was hoping it would, but I was really pleasantly surprised, laughing the whole way through. This, other than Jackass, is probably the most I've laughed in the theater this year, and also to laugh with a crowd that all were also laughing. I mean, it's one thing to be like the one idiot in the crowd who's laughing, but to be in a group of people that's all just having a great time is a really special thing.
Yeah, I've seen the film 3 times now, so the first time being that press showing. And it was really interesting because obviously it would have been a room full of cine-literate people, well, at least most of them. So like there was a lot of jokes that were getting like great laughs, the stuff that kind of, not just the meta jokes about Nicolas Cage, but the stuff that kind of pokes aim at Hollywood as a kind of industry and like what we come to expect of the films that this is aping and kind of sometimes falls into in parts, but like gets away with it. But it's been interesting to watch it with like different audiences. So like the second time I watched it, I had that weird feeling where I was like watching it like I fucking made the film. Like, do you know what I mean? Like when you hear like the directors going like, oh, the first time I snuck into the movie theater to watch it with an audience, and I was on tenterhooks. So I had that experience watching it. I was like, why?
That's my baby.
I'm just a podcaster. I was like, I have nothing. I have no actual. I don't know. I guess I have a vested interest in this film that if a lot of people see it, maybe more people will listen to my podcast. But apart from that, it's like I didn't make the film. I'm not Pedro Pascal. I'm not Nicolas Cage. I'm not Tom Gormican.
I feel like we have to stress that we're not being paid by Lionsgate to promote this movie in any way, shape, or form. We're just men. We're just normal men.
Yes, just a bunch of guys who love Nicolas Cage and love this movie. But let's start getting into some puzzle pieces, and we'll talk about everything that worked and maybe some stuff that didn't work and everything else along the way. But we'll start with you, Darryl. What do you have for your first piece?
Well, there was a number of pieces I was thinking about here, but I think one I was quite excited to get out of the way first, and I suppose to bring I suppose it's no surprise to listeners of your podcast that you're an Evil Dead fan. So Evil Dead adjacent, I would like to bring to the table My Name is Bruce from 2007.
Nice.
We're talking about meta films. I think this was one, probably for a variety of reasons, slipped under a number of radars when it released. I vaguely, it's been about 15 years, maybe 13, 15 years since I've watched it, but this is almost I don't know, I suppose a horror version of Massive Talent in a way.
Sure, yeah.
And a real-life monster comes to town, and the people go calling on the doors of one Bruce Campbell, to save the day. I kind of want to watch My Name is Bruce again now. I don't remember if it was that good, but I just love Bruce Campbell. He's another guy for me like Nicolas Cage who can do no wrong.
Yeah.
So a meta horror version of massive talent, which watch more Bruce Campbell films. Come on, people, if you don't know by now.
Seriously, that's such a great piece to kick it off with. I can't believe I didn't think of it, honestly, because that's perfect. It really is like the horror version of this being more of, an action comedy. And yeah, it's great. And Nicolas Cage does have a lot of parallels to Bruce Campbell and the kinds of careers that they have, especially in some of the weirder and straight to video kind of stuff that the two of them have done over the years.
There are some actors I think you can sort of make these I don't know. I think we're coining a term here, these Cagean parallels, where I think, as you said right there, Nicolas Cage, like Bruce Campbell, there's probably going to be a lot that you haven't heard of. You'll have heard of the big hitters. You'll have heard of your Evil Deads, your Evil Dead TV series. You might have well have caught him on Ye Olde Burn Notice back in the day as well.
Sure.
And for like Nick Cage, you'll have heard of your Con Airs and your Face Offs and your Mandys and the such, but there's a lot of things in the interim as well, which hopefully between us Cage fans we can shed some light on, just like My Name is Bruce as well. So
absolutely,
the message is, the big hits are nice, but sometimes you got to look for those B-sides, people. There's some gold on the B-sides as well.
Absolutely.
I think what's interesting about both Nicolas Cage and Bruce Campbell is they both have that innate aspect to them that they can make any film they're in a insert actor's name film. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's a Nicolas Cage film. It's like a genre to itself. It's like a Bruce Campbell film. Like, if he's kind of front and center, it's like, it's a Bruce Campbell film. Like, you look at something like Bubba Hotep, it's like, oh, nobody else could do that apart from Bruce Campbell. Like, Nicolas Cage in like 99% of his films, it's like,
yeah,
only Nicolas Cage could do that film.
I love that. That's so great. That's why they're so beloved. Why they both have such huge cult followings for sure. But let's go to your first one, Petros. What do you got?
I've got the Spike Jonze film Being John Malkovich, just because I think that both films deal with that aspect of celebrity and that idea of how we perceive an actor, or we perceive the idea of celebrity. And I guess Being John Malkovich is kind of a far weirder version of The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent. There's similarities, but there's also stark differences, whereas this one is kind of delving into the mind of Nicolas Cage through the eyes almost of like fans, whereas Being John Malkovich is people genuinely going into the mind of John Malkovich and finding stuff out about themselves, as opposed to kind of peeling back any layers of John Malkovich himself. And
yeah,
I think they work as well as some point, because I remember reading somewhere that Nicolas Cage was approached to play the Charlie Sheen character in Being John Malkovich, and as kind of John Malkovich's friend and confidant when he kind of starts to realize that things are going weird in his life. And I think they're kind of definitely. I think Charlie Kaufman specifically is at the base of this film somewhere. Kind of, you could pick out any of his films and kind of go, oh yeah, there's similarities to The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent.
Yeah, and you're getting Nicolas Cage from the point of view of the fans, but also from the point of view of Nicolas Cage here in the scenes where he's interacting with his kind of id-like personification of younger Nicolas Cage as Nicky, which are such fun scenes to watch.
Yeah, what's fascinating about that as well is I know that like Tom and Kevin said like they kind of gave Nicolas Cage this choice of which era of his kind of life he would like to draw upon, and he chose that specific Terry Wogan interview version of himself because he doesn't like that guy, so it was the perfect way to kind of make him the villain. He's like, that guy's obnoxious. Do you know what I mean? He kind of front flips out onto the stage throwing dollar bills at people and karate kicking and stuff like that. And I think I think that's really interesting that that's kind of a note he had. So obviously that's very much coming from him. But I know he's also said that, I don't know, like this isn't who he is. So I think that's where it's kind of that thing of like, yeah, it's kind of through that, I don't know, weird lens of what people perceive Nicolas Cage to almost be.
Yeah, it's like him getting to reckon with his younger self while at the same time, like, well, actually, no, that's not me. So, don't read too much into it. But at the same time, he is doing it.
Yeah, and he's reckoning with that perception, that kind of memification of Nicolas Cage in a way as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to continue right along with your Charlie Kaufman there and go with Adaptation for my first piece, which I told you guys I would, of course, be using here in this conversation. You guys both know how much I love this movie. It's my favorite movie, but not just for dueling Nicolas Cage performances here. Of course, in Adaptation, he's playing both Charlie Kaufman and his fictional brother, Donald. So you've got that in there as well, but also just for the way that this movie plays out in its plot. I mean, we've got this character, Javi, who wants Nick Cage to star in his movie, and they kind of want the movie to go one way. And as the movie is unfolding, we're seeing it unfold in a way that they didn't quite want it to go necessarily, with kidnappings and whatnot. And that is exactly the struggle that Charlie Kaufman goes through in Adaptation while trying to adapt this book about flowers and not turn it into a big Hollywood thing. And of course, as it goes on, the whole movie is becoming this big Hollywood thing with drugs and love and sex and violence and all that stuff. So there's a lot, I think, that they drew on Adaptation here and turned it into like a meta version of what was already a meta thing in Adaptation.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's one of the things I noticed in watching Massive Talent, the same as I noticed in watching Adaptation for the first time, is that you're kind of watching the story be written as it unfolds.
Yeah.
And it was like, I remember watching Adaptation for the first time and feeling really smart. I was like, I'm watching this happen. I was like, it was like the light bulb went. I was like, I get it. I understand cinema. I'm now an auteur. Yes. I think exactly what you're saying. They're taking a heavy bit of inspiration from Adaptation, because everyone's talking like, this has got to be a heavy character drama. It's got to be it's got to be a this. It's got to be a that, and then it just unfolds before your eyes, and then suddenly they've won an award at the end of it. And I was like, oh well. So when in doubt, end your film with Nicolas Cage getting an award.
Yeah, that's a good message there for sure.
Yeah, I think Adaptation is kind of... I know Tom Gormican has said... Did he say on your podcast, Adaptation's his favourite Nick Cage film as well, right, Darryl? So I think
he's got good taste.
This is very much a love letter to that film, and it doesn't go as weird and kind of doesn't go as navel-gazy as Adaptation, but I don't think anything can unless it's from the mind of Charlie Kaufman. Like, do you know what I mean? It kind
right, sure.
That is like that is a snake eating its own tail of a movie that like kind of, I don't know, gets really sad. There's obviously, like, I think one of the things that, I don't know, a lot of people have been noticing since seeing Massive Talent is there's a melancholic edge to the film that I think is really great, and the balance of tone, it kind of like teeters on a knife edge of this sadness of this Nick Cage we see in the film. Kind of, yeah, it's funny, but then the next moment you're kind of like, oh, my heart. Do you know what I mean? You feel for him. It's like dealing with that perception of who you are and what you mean to the world and what you mean to the industry and the fans that are around you is heartbreaking. And I think, I don't know, Adaptation's definitely, it's the number one pick, right? We should have opened the episode. You should have gone first, David. You should have opened on that.
So far we're on a roll. All three of these pieces I think are great. So we're going good already. But let's start getting into some more. What do you have for your next one, Darryl?
So I think following on with that, with one film that has a duality of Cage with another, I think it's only fair that we bring Face Off into the mix.
Nice.
I think all of us went like, yeah, of course he said Face Off. Nice. just watched it again recently the other night, and again, this is a film that I think it's easy to miss on these things on like first viewings. Maybe with a massive talent, I think maybe the same with an adaptation, maybe the same with a Face Off, but it shows. I think the range of Cage's acting, from it showing how many emotions this man can do. And also him balancing multiple characters in the film with massive talent. We've got this Nick Cage. We've got the sort of imaginary Terry Wogan Nicky in Face Off. He's playing himself, and then he's playing John Travolta, and then he's playing himself, playing John Travolta, playing himself. And this is like a humble brag as well. It's taken 2 years, but I finally got my partner to watch Face Off the other night. It's one of the greatest achievements. If this podcast does nothing else, this is one of the great achievements. Yes, she laughed every time the face hand thing happened, and she. I don't know if we can explain why. I said to her, "Don't worry about it. Just let it happen."
Yeah.
As you did it to her as well. Just let it happen. Just let it happen, babe.
I did it to her. I did it to the cat. I went to the neighbour and I said, "Look, just let it happen. Just let it happen." And it's one that's obviously that's referenced in the movie as well. Javi's got the grotesque Nicolas Cage waxwork figure with the golden guns.
Sure.
That's Nicolas Cage tries to buy. I think they add a little nod to Cage's spending habits in there as well. And I am not a gun owner, but I would love a pair of golden guns. I don't know about you guys.
If anything, for sure. Yeah, and I would also add on to that. I by the way, haven't watched Face Off in a long time. I was going to before this podcast. I just did not have time, but I'm going to celebrate by watching it maybe this weekend. But because I loved it when I was younger. But you don't get to a movie like The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent being like dramatic Oscar winner Nicolas Cage only, or straight to video Nicolas Cage only. Like you need to have these big gigantic action blockbusters that people celebrate for decades to even think about a movie like this coming about. So I think Face Off is a perfect example of that.
Yeah, I think you could interchange any of that kind of what many people call like the golden era of Cage, that like kind of the beige Volvo trilogy, like The Rock, Con Air, or Face Off, just because like they all kind of get name checked in this film, so like to some degree, whether it's that kind of opening gambit of the stoned couple watching Con Air, or him accidentally turning onto one of the greatest lines from The Rock when he like on the plane, where it's like the a-hole line. I'm saying it's one of the greatest lines. Can't even remember it. Fucking hell.
He's a phony, everyone. He's a phony.
My mind is just too boggled with fucking data at the moment.
Yeah, there's a lot going on for sure. I'm curious to see once you do that ranking episode with all of that data that you guys are collaborating on, like which one of those three turns out highest on the list. Like that's going to be an interesting thing to see.
Well, tomorrow we will find out the time of recording.
We will find out,
and you guys will find out next week time.
Teasers.
What do you have for your next piece then, Petros?
So I really like, it's only because it's something that jumped to mind. Like it's you could kind of have any buddy action cop movie, but one that really jumped to mind was the Jump Street movies from a few years back, the Channing Tatum and Jonah Hill movies. Just because tonally, I think like, I don't know, it feels like we've departed from like what this film like talks about is, and the chat you get online all the time, like every time people see a movie, like they come out of The Northman and be like, oh, The Northman's great. They don't make movies like this anymore. Despite the fact I just saw this movie, or like Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent. They don't make these kind of mid-budget like adult comedies anymore. And like I think ones that stick in my mind of the kind of last 10 years are those Jump Street movies, and especially like getting that tonal, like that balance between those two leads, and like creating that amazing bromance, which is kind of like the lifeblood of The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent. Obviously, like you kind of go in expecting it to be like a Nicolas Cage wankathon, and then your kind of heart is taken by this like a beautiful bromance between Nicolas Cage and Harvey in the movie.
Yeah.
I think, they like, I don't know, imagine, like the filmmakers would have been like, that's kind of the ballpark we're aiming for to try and get that buddy comedy like relationship down pat and that kind of energy. And I think tonally they kind of feel like similar movies.
Yeah, you were talking about the melancholy earlier, and the whole bromance angle to this is like super important to this movie. Just, not just turning into just, silliness and nothing more than that. Like there is a character at the center of it who, needs a friend, and there's two characters who really need friends, and they connect over their shared love of movies. And that's an exciting thing for people like us who love movies.
Yeah. And obviously they're two sides of the same coin, right? They can't escape the lives that they've made for themselves, whether it's kind of Harvey with being blood relatives to like an arms dealer, or Nicolas Cage kind of, he's so entrenched in being an actor, and there's kind of like a pivotal moment where it's like you can't just turn your back on the life you've created for yourself, or it's like foisted upon you. Like you can't. Harvey says to Nick, like, you've got this talent, you need to use it. You need to kind of. It's one of the greatest things in this kind of ever increasing depressing world we live in. And I think I think that's really interesting. And it's like, I don't know, that they can't escape their lives, but they find each other in the kind of maelstrom and, I don't know, throes of it all. And like especially that conversation about like the top 3 movies, it's just like, I've had that conversation so many times. It's like, they're the times where you're like, this guy's gonna be my friend forever. We've kind of got similar top 3s or whatever, or we love the same obscure 70s movies or something like that.
Sure. Yeah, that's, I think, probably the reason people like us become movie podcasters, is because we're constantly having that conversation over and over again. So yeah, it definitely hits home a lot. I'll go to my next piece here, which I am going to go with Ben Stiller's comedy Tropic Thunder, a movie that so just beautifully skewers the self-importance of Hollywood, actors, action movies, the problem with worshiping, celebrities as heroes and idols, and how they're just kind of messed up people too. And that also is just a hilarious, nonstop, self-referential meta movie that the whole time is just such a blast to watch if you're a fan of movies in general and of Hollywood, and is just completely filled with inside jokes and all the kind of things that we hoped this movie would be, being the Nick Cage movie, and absolutely delivers on a lot of that stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is one of the things, I think I remember speaking to you, Petros, that we'd be kind of a bit nervous about. I think for some reason, we were joking earlier about taking credit for this film, and I think we should at this point. Let's be honest with ourselves.
Sure.
A weird tangential side note, a friend of mine I've not spoken to for years messaged me on Instagram, is like, I saw Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent, really good. I feel like I should thank you, but I don't know why. I was like, yeah, sure, why not? And I think you want these kind of things where, actors can sort of poke fun at themselves and we can have meta jokes, but then it's things that aren't too, I guess, exclusive, and I'm going to cast people out. And there are, of course, there are jokes in this for the Nick Cage fans, but I think also the joy is, I think a fear of mine was like, do you need to have a Nick Cage podcast to watch this movie? No, you don't. And then I think, it's the joy of Cage as well, which I think a lot of people don't quite cotton onto sometimes, that he is in on the joke. He is aware,
right,
even though he's, not on the internet and Googling himself, unlike you, Pedro Pascal. I know what you rapscallion. He's in on the joke, and we can all, he's allowing us into that world. So it's nice. It's nice when people can sort of let the mask down a little bit.
Yeah,
I think that's a really valid point you made about, like, in regards to Nicolas Cage being in on the joke, and also the fact that you don't have to be a Nicolas Cage aficionado to enjoy Massive Talent. And I think that same vein runs throughout Tropic Thunder, right? In the fact that there are jokes for the massive film fans and stuff like that. They're kind of poking fun at the what you've got to do to get an Oscar with like the Simple Jack stuff and the kind of clear pastiches to stuff like Apocalypse Now. And obviously, if you've seen Hearts of Darkness, you'll be like, oh yeah, they're kind of riffing on that element of it. They're riffing on this. Whereas it just does work as a just silly comedy as well. And I think that's what Massive Talent does as well. It's kind of, like I said, you kind of go in expecting it to be a Nick Cage wankathon. Just because I like that term. And
sure.
and you're swept up because it's something different. It's still fun. There's jokes. There's a scene where they take acid. That's funny. That's funny regardless of who it is or what the context of the film is, especially in the way that it's handled in this film.
Absolutely. And like also like some of the other characters, like Ike Barinholtz and Tiffany Haddish, who I'm not typically big on either of those two actors, but they were funny. They had very funny moments in this, and Neil Patrick Harris has his moments. I mean, everybody really gets moments, especially Pedro Pascal gets, so many funny moments in this. But I mean, it's funny regardless of who the movie is about. It just so happens to also be a Nick Cage movie.
Yeah, you could imagine a version of this film in some way where it's kind of stripped out, like it would have to have a major rewrite, but kind of just being about an actor who is struggling with their career. Do you know what I mean? It kind of adds another great aspect to it, that it is Nicolas Cage and it's self-referential and he's in on the joke. But like, you could see a version of this film just about, I don't know, do you know what I mean, Johnny Thunder, like the struggling actor, and like there's enough kind of, I don't know, kind of shared memory we all have of actors, Nicolas Cage being one, who've kind of had these turbulent careers where they've had their ups and their downs, their peaks and their valleys, and it's kind of it would still work.
By the way, the new Guy Ritchie movie that's coming out later this year that's been delayed like 6 times, I think that's kind of what that movie is, if I'm not mistaken. So,
Yeah.
Maybe I'll be using this as a puzzle piece when that movie comes out.
I don't. That's one of those films. It's like the new Morbius. I don't believe it exists until it's actually released. The poster never looked real for that movie. It kind of looked like
doesn't.
First day. Do you know what I mean? Like, oh yeah, get the intern to do the graphic design for this one, and then I think I've seen the trailer loads of times when they were pushing it, and then it got pushed back, and then they've kind of dumped it, and I'm sure it will get wheeled out once it actually is nearer release. If that ever happens.
Totally. So, Darryl, let's go to your next piece. What do you got?
I think first of all, Petros, it's the summer of Morbius. Have some respect, man. I think just I think jumping off, I guess a point you were talking about what this film could have been, a film that more or less was what you were talking about, with a struggling actor making a comeback, I suppose. And one that occurred to me far too recently was Birdman, or The Unexpected Virtue of Ignorance from 2014. And that being about a fading cinema star who's, trying to sort of get the career back on track, and he's haunted by, I guess, the successes of the past through the titular the Birdman, in the same way that Nick is, I guess, really harassed / encouraged / French kissed by Nicky in this movie as well. There's this idea of, I suppose as well, sort of poking idea at celebrity, about, the idea we have of like movie stars, and in these films, there's sort of this inner combative nature of what they want to do next versus what they've been tied to in the past as well. It's always this interesting thing of, in a way, suppose, do you embrace what's come before, or do you keep on moving on to different things? And I guess, we speak about the duality of Cage as well. He's a man who has been in every genre and done it pretty well, I think, and then continues to do new things that are unexpected. obviously in the movie he wants to move away from acting because he's in debt in the movie. But then by the end has rejuvenated his career.
Thankfully.
Thankfully. Could have gone a bit of a darker way like Birdman as well.
Yeah.
But like, you know, it's so easy for us to end up gushing about Cage, and I'm sure we will continue to do so as the episode goes on. But even now, he's still doing things that are surprising. Like we've got 2 Nicolas Cage westerns that are coming up 40 plus years into his career. So the man is the proverbial box of chocolates. You do not know what you're going to get, and that's the way I like it. He is the mystery chocolate box man, and that's the way. That's the way he will live in my memory forever.
Yeah, I think that's a great piece to include, and you know, even though Michael Keaton is drawing on that, you know, knowledge of him previously being Batman, I think you could see Nicolas Cage like influence as well in that role. I mean, it just seems like somebody who's just going big, you know, and going big in that way that we all associate with somebody like Cage.
Yeah, definitely. And I was saying that as well. I think Michael Keaton's coming back for The Flash. If Ezra Miller hasn't been recast and arrested by that point, Hawaii, lock your island down and get him out. And then there's these, I don't know if they're rumours at this point, but there was an interview that Cage did recently where he didn't outright say no to doing Superman. And that's got, you know, Cage lunatics like us thinking, wait a minute, what? So it's, you know, we just don't know. You know, is he going to turn up in Doctor Strange? Is he going to be Superman again? Will he finally play Captain Nemo? All these questions and more. Will we get answers? I just want answers.
Yeah, I said at the beginning of the episode, like a movie like this that we're talking about doesn't come along, you know, more than once in a lifetime. But the Captain Nemo and Superman, those would be the 2 other situations where you guys should just, you know, go nuts, scheduling all kinds of extra podcasts and stuff like that. Yeah, so.
We'll do a live podcast at sea to celebrate.
Yeah. I guess both of us have different captain, but we always have we're like Captain Ahab with our white whale of tracking down Nicolas Cage. So yeah, we'll be seafaring for that episode. I like it, Darryl. Let's pencil it in. Let's dock at the port. Let's set sail.
I'll extend the credit card limit and see what supplies we can get.
Petros, what do you have for your next piece?
It could only be one film, and that is Paddington 2.
Nice.
Because it gives us not just one of the best like jokes in this film, it gives us some of the heart as well. I like the kind of wrap up we get at the end, that is like a callback to that joke, but also like, I don't know, closes out the movie on this really sweet, tender moment of Nicolas Cage reconnecting with his estranged wife and his kind of distant daughter. And kind of that is the film. And yeah, Harvey's line, like, what is it? I watched it and it changed me. It changed, like I was a different man for seeing that film. It's just so good. Like all 3 times I've seen this movie in the theaters, it's just that's got the biggest laugh, I reckon. Like that's one of the biggest laughs I've seen in this movie. And I think it has to be a puzzle pick just because it's like that joke. I can't think of any other film that is as universally loved and almost as memed. Like that film is memed as much as Nicolas Cage, in the fact that like every, I don't know, in like a 3 to 6 month cycle, they'll wheel out the whole thing that like it's Rotten Tomatoes score is dropped or a new critic has come out and it's gone back up again. And it's like that film kind of has this Nicolas Cage style story to it, that like it's always up and down, and it's like the critic's gonna turn on it, is somebody gonna praise it again. It's just it's a lovely film as well, and it's like
it is,
and it's I think I agree with Harvey. It's fantastic. It warmed my heart, certainly.
It's a perfect one to like bring us all together and
Yes.
like bring us on the same page as the characters and, you know, get us that moment of catharsis at the end. It's like, yeah, it's a great movie for them to have used for that whole bit, for that running kind of gag, but also not even a gag. It's something we all kind of feel.
Yeah, definitely. And getting to ask the writers and director about it, I was like, you know, I think a few of us went into this movie expecting certain movies to be referenced. And I was like, why Paddington 2? Because I was like, I think it gets mentioned maybe 3 times in the movie, and we're talking about bonding Nicolas Cage and Javi in it or crying together. And asked the writer, and he said a friend of his actually said he cried through the whole movie and it made him want to be a better man. So it's just to the wider aspect as well, and it's very much with the nature of this podcast as well. It's Massive Talent is a movie that celebrates making movies as well, and Paddington 2 is a part of that, and I think it should set a precedent for more films calling out Paddington 2 as a celebration as well.
Yeah, why not? It's whatever brings people happiness in these insane times, right? So, so I'll go to my last piece, and this one it kind of ties in with a lot of the same themes as my last puzzle piece, Tropic Thunder. But I'm going to go with 2007's Edgar Wright film Hot Fuzz, which also it skewers the buddy action comedy while also being a perfect example of the buddy action comedy. And I feel like that's the main thing with Unbearable Weight is that it is just a really great, we talked about the bromance. It's, you know, it's like a really great bromantic buddy action comedy, which is exactly what it's skewering at the same time. And so you kind of get both angles of that. It's filled with legit action, you know, real jokes based on both the character and meta jokes about the genre itself. And 2 great leading performances that play off each other so well and just have so much chemistry, and they're having so much fun, you can tell, making the movie. And just the whole vibe between these 2 movies just really, I think, connects them really well.
I think that's a really interesting point about the fact that this film almost gets to have its cake and eat it, in the fact that it gets to skewer those ideas of the action comedy, but gets to be it as well. Because I recently had a conversation with a friend of mine who was talking about the new Scream movie, and his kind of biggest bugbear with that film was the fact that they were so self-aware with like, hey, we're playing with the conventions of what a horror movie is, but they're also doing it. Do you know what I mean? And like I guess that can be like a kind of annoyance for people, and that's like that's one of the things I've seen people be down about most on Massive Talent, is that idea that like it's trying to poke fun at something and also trying to do it. It does it at the same time, which I can understand, but like you said, I think Massive Talent does it really well. Like, do you know what I mean? You could take out the, I don't know, it just works. It's got great jokes, irregardless of the meta jokes and stuff like that. That it kind of and it's made with love. It's made with kind of care and attention to its subject, and you can tell that they care about Nick Cage, and they care about movies, comedy, action movies. That like that's why I think it gets to have its cake and eat it.
Yeah. I don't know how you guys feel about the new Matrix movie, Matrix Resurrections, but I feel like that kind of exposed people's lack of patience for meta stuff. The many people who really just did not like it, and I loved it. And, you know, I obviously love a lot of meta type stuff. And I don't know, I just think that there's so much extra to be had there, so much fun, so many, you know, connections to make and references to have fun with. I think it could be a really great thing and add another layer to an otherwise, you know, maybe not as good movie, but it could elevate them in ways that are exciting and fun to play with. So yeah, some people aren't going to connect with that aspect of it though, for sure.
Yeah, it's I think for us as well, you know, I know we've got a bit of a running joke about having maybe sort of too much running on the success of Massive Talent, whether the history books say it's a success or not. But I know it can always be a bit difficult. Some people can get turned off by when films are a bit too knowing and stuff. But I think, as we said, I think Massive Talent does strike enough of a balance of like Cage humor and poking fun of himself, and I suppose some of the conventions of movie making as they're talking about, and then acting out a movie in real time as well. But it is just a lot of it is a lot of fun to watch, and I know and I always tell myself never get involved in the discourse because it doesn't end well. I know the discourse at the time of recording is they never release original movies. It's the summer of Morbius. But then we've got The Northman and Massive Talent, and the question is, this is Massive Talent is the movie you all asked for. God damn it! So go and watch it, or send me your coordinates and I'll fly out and we'll duel.
Yeah, I find that crazy. In the space of a month here in the UK, obviously we've got a delayed release date on one of these, but we had like The Northman one Friday, then the following Friday, Massive Talent, and then like 2 weeks
Let's not
after
forget about
that,
Ambulance a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, Ambulance. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. We've had Ambulance. We've had, and then we've got Everything Everywhere All at Once coming out on the 13th of May here, and it's like this, like all this discourse on they don't make movies like they used to. It's like, or they don't make movies for adults. They do. They really, really do. But the same people who say that are the same people who rush out first day to see all the Marvel movies just so they can kind of get their hot take on Twitter before that it goes cold. Do you know what I mean? They have to, and it's like, and then they also complain about like, I went to see The Northman and there was like mainstream movie fans there. They won't get it. And it's like, this is what you want. You want these people to go see these films. No films aren't going to get made like this anymore if the kind of quote unquote normies don't go and watch it. It's like, stop. Yeah. What do you want? Like, really, what do you want? Yeah, I'm incensed.
That is so funny. Yeah. Please, people, go see these damn movies. Seriously. So that way we don't have to have this discourse over and over again. But I'm going to go ahead and do the finished puzzle, and then we'll get into some closing thoughts here on the unbearable weight of massive talent. We talked about My Name is Bruce, Being John Malkovich, Adaptation, Face Off, 21 Jump Street, Tropic Thunder, Birdman, Paddington 2, and Hot Fuzz. A lot of great pieces here. Were there any other movies? I know we said we were going to prepare 3. Is there anything else you guys wanted to shout out? Any other like last minute ones?
I suppose there were a few for me that might sort of been a bit too similar, so I tried to err on the side of caution for a few. I was toying with JCVD from 2008.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
I think that's if you watch nothing else from the movie, just Google JCVD monologue and just thank me later. I was torn between, in terms of meta films, and I was torn between adding Space Jam, professionals at the top of their game coming back to find that passion. Put Nicolas Cage in Space Jam 3 if you make it, you cowards. And I suppose, I think obviously the cabinet of Dr. Caligari gets numerous shout outs in the movie as well.
Sure.
And Nicolas Cage German expression. I've sounded like Sean Connery there. I'm talking about The Rock. But those were a few of mine.
We need a Dr. Caligari Paddington marathon night or something like that. Watch both of those back to back.
Yeah,
Nicolas Cage favorites.
What's Harvey's 3 picks? It's Face Off, Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, and Paddington 2. That's
there's a triple bill.
That's a triple bill. Yeah. Cinemas, put it on, you cowards. Do you know what I mean? That's your triple bill. In regards to other puzzle pieces I had a couple of TV ones just because I felt they were, like, again, just playing on that idea of subverting the public perception and people playing themselves. One of them being Curb Your Enthusiasm, which obviously Larry David gets to play, I guess, the worst version of himself, or the version of himself that he wishes he could be, of just like
a little of both.
Yeah. Whereas like Nick Cage, gets to play a version almost that the internet perceives him to be. And I guess it could be the worst version of himself, that he's so kind of career focused and kind of loves the idea of being a star and is after that. Whereas from interviews, you get the impression that he I don't know, the shades of it in Massive Talent, that he does it. He is a workman, right? He goes out to work, and he just makes movies. He loves making movies. So I kind of like those. And I now really want to see Nicolas Cage in an episode of Curb Your Enthusiasm, or get like a kind of a season arc. That would be.
Give
Beautiful.
me that,
Yes.
please.
Don't play with my emotions, man.
And the only other one was Extras, the kind of the Ricky Gervais and Stephen Merchant sitcom, again, just because it's littered with people messing about with their public and personal personas to kind of, I don't know, have fun with the audience and get some great comedy out of it.
Perfect. Yeah. I also had, talking about the bromance earlier, I had I Love You Man, but I felt like we kind of got into a lot of that anyway with the other pieces. And then similarly to some of my, actor Hollywood type pieces, I also was thinking about Three Amigos, which also deals with actors getting involved in actual action related situations. So, fun movie, of course. Classic. So awesome. Any closing thoughts, and we'll wrap this thing up. Darryl, let's go to you first.
I remember when this movie was announced, I was like, all right, you have my attention. And then going into this, like it's a fun surprise. It isn't the movie you expect it to be. I know we've said it all the way through, but there's great humor, there's great sort of emotion, there's sort of pathos, there's a lot of fun and heart in it as well. And I think this is a movie I will be continuing to bang the drum about for some time yet, or at least until Lionsgate sends me a freebie pack or some goodies, and then pay me off, and I'll quiet down.
Mm-hmm.
But I think and not that I wasn't a fan of him anyway from other roles, but I think this is really put me much more onto the scent of Pedro Pascal in this as well. Yeah. From tweeting about this, my Twitter timeline just keeps popping up with Pedro Pascal stands. And you know what? I'm into it. I'm a fan of the man. I think I might start an account just tweeting about him as well, because it seems to do big numbers. So I'm drinking that Pascal Kool-Aid.
Nice. What about you, Petros?
Just go out and see it. It's like, it's nowhere near as weird as it could have been, which but that's not a fault of the movie. And I do think, like, from speaking to Tom and Kevin about the film, that there were sequences and ideas that, and it gets me excited. I think the rewatchability for this, especially when it inevitably gets a physical media release, sounds like it's going to be packed with kind of deleted scenes and stuff like that, and sequences.
Well, that's exciting. That
they spent money on. Like, there's a whole kind of Cabinet of Dr. Caligari sequence where Cage gets to have references to some of his old movies, whether it's Face Off, Leaving Las Vegas. Like they said, they recreated the hotel room from that, where Cage kills Nicky, like in this Cabinet of Dr. Caligari style sequence. It's like, wow, that's great. And I think they've already, just even a small scene they released just on social media. Maybe it's like Pedro Pascal, shared it, and it was just more jokes, like revolving. It was like, what's his Wi-Fi password? And it was something like, it's National Treasure 2, Book of Secrets. It's like the first, the first letter's a capital, and it's like it just adds more into that stuff. So yeah, go out and see it, because it is it's great. I imagine if you've been listening to this, you might be a Cage fan, but if you're not, like we've been saying throughout this conversation, there is enough in there for the Cage acolytes and the kind of, the Cage virgins, as it were, like the kind of the fresh eyes to, and hopefully it draws people into delving back into those movies that we've talked about on this podcast, but ones that are referenced in the film. Like I'm interested. I wish I could see the Amazon and iTunes figures for what's going to happen with Guarding Tess Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
The rentals and the rentals and the downloads going to shoot up all of a sudden because people are like, I need to know about this relationship between the ex-first lady and Agent Doug Chesnick. Do you know what I mean? Is that like what's gonna happen?
Yeah, that movie is gonna have huge numbers over the next couple weeks for sure. But yeah, awesome. I think that does it for Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent. I'm so happy to have both of you guys here on the podcast to talk about it. This was great. Let's get some plugs going, guys. Where can people find your podcast, Darryl? Let's go with yours first.
You can find me on all the usual streaming services, your Apples and your Googles and your Podchasers, and where you can rate and stuff. I'm on Twitter at Cage_podcast, Instagram at Cage Rage Pod. I've recently started a TikTok account. I'm 30 years old and it feels weird. At Cage Rage Podcast, so you can find me on there as well.
Try being 41 and starting a TikTok. But,
Touche.
Yeah.
Where are you at, Petros?
You can find me again on all the kind of regular places you download podcasts. So you got to type in is Caged in Coppola Connections, because the podcast is in a weird new stage of its life where I'm looking at all of the films, the Coppola family. And you can find me on all the socials. So yeah, that is Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Letterboxd, and TikTok. 31 years old, feeling old. Don't feel as old as you, David. But that's all at Caged In Pod across all of those platforms. Nice and easy to come find me. So yeah, come, especially come join myself, Darryl, and the other UK-based Nicolas Cage podcast for an episode we're dubbing The Unbearable Weight of Nicolas Cage Podcasts. That will be a lot of fun.
I can't wait to listen to that. And guys, thanks again so much. Hopefully we'll get you guys back for some other movies sometime soon.
Would love to.
Amazing. Thank you so much, David.
Hey there, classmates. Tune in to Middle Class Film Class every Monday and Wednesday for weekly movie news, streaming picks, and one deep dive review.
The Batman trailer. There was a teaser, there was a trailer 1, trailer 2, final trailer. I don't know if it's the same one. How many trailers do we need exactly?
Leave an email or a voicemail to join in the discussion.
Bullshit artist!
Yeah, buddy.
That's
right.
You're going full Danzig.
That's right, I am. My trans
You have no
is
power over me.
All right, so I hope you enjoyed that conversation about the unbearable weight of massive talent. Thank you to Darryl and Petros for joining me on that one. That was a really fun conversation. Make sure to check out their podcasts. And while you're at it, make sure you are subscribed to Piecing It Together wherever it is that you listen to podcasts. And if you wouldn't mind, maybe click that 5-star button and drop us a little rating and review wherever that is, if it's Apple Podcasts or Good Pods or Podchaser, one of the places that you can click a 5-star and type in a nice little note. We'd appreciate that if you did that. You could also follow us on social media at Piecing Pod. Join our Facebook group, Popcorn and Puzzle Pieces, where we continue the conversation about all the movies we talk about here on the show. And don't forget about our Produced by David Rosen Patreon, where I post bonus content from Piecing It Together, advanced content from Piecing It Together. Actually, tonight, at the time of recording, I'm also recording The Northman and Sonic the Hedgehog 2, so those will go up on the Patreon as soon as I'm done editing them, and then they'll hit the main feed whenever they hit the main feed. I'm not sure when that's going to be, but, you can get them early on Patreon, so that's cool. There's also bonus content from Awesome Movie Year, which is another movie podcast that I produce, as well as stuff from my music career, which I'm actually about to start scoring a new film, so I'm going to be very busy for the next month or so while I'm getting that done, while continuing to cover lots of movies here on the podcast, and why do I do it to myself? Anyway, speaking of my music, let's close it out with a piece of my music. And while I'm not sitting here saying that I have a massive talent, I'm going to play a track that I really do love a lot. This is from my album, my self-titled album, David Rosen. It's called Like Never Before. And I hope you enjoy it. It's a big one, a big dramatic track. So I thought for such a big dramatic movie title, it would be a good fit. So hope you enjoy it. Again, it's called Like Never Before. It's on my album that's just self-titled. It's called David Rosen. Enjoy it, and we'll be back with more Piecing It Together real soon.
An All Points West production, produced by David Rosen in Las Vegas.